The sledgehammer came down on my $15,000 battery system with a sickening crack. Metal twisted. Sparks flew. 3 years of engineering work were destroyed in seconds. I stood there watching Corinne Mitchell smile as her hired thugs demolished everything I had built. The same woman who had shaken my hand when I moved to Willowbrook Estates. The same woman who had welcomed me to the neighborhood with homemade cookies. She turned to face me, her perfectly styled hair catching the afternoon sun. Her voice was sweet as poison when she spoke. "I warned you about unauthorized installations, didn't I?" But Corinne had no idea what she had just done. She did not know that I was the engineer who designed the power monitoring systems for half the utility companies in the state. She did not know that her little reign of terror was about to end. That was the moment I decided to destroy her completely. My name is David Chen, and I am a power systems engineer. After 15 years of corporate stress and 60-hour work weeks, I thought I had found paradise in Willowbrook Estates. The neighborhood was everything the brochure promised. Pristine lawns stretched like green carpets between colonial-style homes. Ancient oak trees lined the streets, their branches creating natural canopies over the sidewalks. Children rode bicycles safely on quiet roads while parents waved from front porches. The HOA seemed reasonable at first. Basic rules about lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors, and parking. Nothing too invasive. Nothing that would interfere with my new life as a remote consultant. Corinne Mitchell was the HOA president. A woman in her early 50s with shoulder-length blonde hair that never seemed out of place. She had bright blue eyes and a smile that could light up a room. When she knocked on my door 3 days after I moved in, she brought fresh baked chocolate chip cookies and a welcome packet. "We are so excited to have a professional like you in our community," she said, her voice warm and genuine. "If you need anything at all, please do not hesitate to ask." I thanked her and watched her walk back to her house 2 streets over. She seemed like the perfect neighbor. I had no idea I was shaking hands with a predator. My home office was my sanctuary. 3 monitors displayed real-time data from client power grids across the country. Servers hummed quietly in custom-built racks. Every wire was perfectly organized. Every connection was redundant. But none of that mattered when the power went out. Our area had serious infrastructure problems. The electrical grid was built in the 1970s and never properly updated. Summer storms knocked out power for hours. Winter ice storms could leave us dark for days. I lost 3 client presentations in my first month because my equipment shut down during critical meetings. That was when I decided to install the backup battery system. I spent 2 months designing the perfect setup. Lithium iron phosphate batteries with a 20-year lifespan, smart inverters that could handle any load, a monitoring system that would make NASA jealous. The whole thing cost me $15,000, but it was worth every penny. The system lived in my garage, mounted on professional-grade racks. Silent, powerful, reliable. When the power went out, my house stayed on. When my neighbors were stumbling around with flashlights, I was working normally. What I did not tell anyone was that I had built much more than a simple backup system. The monitoring equipment I installed was the same technology I designed for utility companies. It could track power usage, voltage fluctuations, and electrical interference across the entire neighborhood. I could see everything that happened on the electrical grid within a 5-mile radius. Every device that turned on or off, every power surge, every anomaly. At the time, I thought this was just professional curiosity. I had no idea it would become the weapon that would destroy Karen Mitchell. The first few months were perfect. My clients were happy. My work was steady. The neighborhood was quiet and peaceful. I even started to enjoy the HOA meetings, which were held the third Thursday of each month in the community center. Karen ran those meetings like a skilled politician. Smooth, confident, always in control. She knew every rule in the HOA handbook and could quote them from memory. Other board members deferred to her judgment on almost everything. I thought she was just very organized. I thought she cared about the community. I was completely wrong. The first violation notice arrived on a Tuesday morning in November. Official HOA letterhead with my name typed perfectly at the top. The subject line made my blood run cold. Unauthorized electrical installation, immediate compliance required. I read the letter 3 times before the words sank in. Karen was claiming that my battery system violated HOA rules about exterior modifications and safety standards. She demanded that I remove the entire system within 30 days or face financial penalties. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. This had to be a mistake. I had pulled all the proper permits. The city had inspected everything. The fire department had signed off on the installation. Karen, this is David Chen from Maple Street. I received your letter about my battery system, but I think there might be some confusion. Her voice was different than I remembered, colder, more formal. There is no confusion, David. Your installation violates multiple HOA covenants. I suggest you review your homeowner agreement more carefully. But I have all the proper permits. The city approved everything. City permits do not override HOA authority. You should know that. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. Something was very wrong here. 3 days later, Karen showed up at my front door unannounced. She was wearing a navy blue blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. Her smile was back, but it did not reach her eyes. I hope you do not mind, David. I was in the neighborhood and thought we should discuss your situation face to face. She pushed past me into the house before I could respond. Her eyes scanned my living room, taking in every detail. The expensive electronics, the professional-grade networking equipment, the obvious signs of someone who worked from home. You have done quite well for yourself, she said, her voice carrying a hint of something I could not identify. Remote work must be very lucrative. I cannot complain. Would you like some coffee? That would be lovely. While I prepared the coffee, Karen wandered around my first floor. She peered into my office. She examined my smart home controls. She asked pointed questions about my work schedule and travel plans. You must be here alone quite a bit, she said, accepting the coffee cup with perfectly manicured hands. Working from home can be isolating. I enjoy the quiet. It helps me focus. Yes, I imagine it does. Tell me, David, do you know your neighbors well? The question caught me off guard. I have met a few people. Everyone seems very nice. They are. We have a wonderful community here, very close-knit. People look out for each other. She paused, sipping her coffee slowly. That is why I was concerned when Mrs. Henderson mentioned the strange humming sounds coming from your garage. Late at night, early in the morning, you understand how that might worry people. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Henderson was my next-door neighbor, a sweet elderly woman who had brought me soup when I had the flu. She had been asking Karen about my battery system. The system is very quiet, I said carefully, quieter than most air conditioners. I am sure it is, but perception matters in a community like this. People need to feel safe. Karen finished her coffee and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back with that same cold smile. I do hope we can resolve this situation quickly, David, for everyone's sake. After she left, I sat in my kitchen feeling like I had just been threatened. But Karen had been so polite, so reasonable, so professional. I was starting to understand that Karen Mitchell was far more dangerous than I had imagined. The HOA board meeting was held that Thursday evening. I arrived early with a folder full of documentation, permits, inspection reports, safety certifications, everything I needed to prove that my system was completely legal and safe. The community center was packed, more people than I had ever seen at a meeting. Karen sat at the head table looking confident and in control. She called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. Tonight we are addressing a serious safety concern, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. Unauthorized electrical installations that may pose risks to our community. She was talking about me, in front of 50 neighbors. Karen presented her case with the skill of a prosecutor. She talked about fire hazards and electrical interference. She mentioned mysterious humming sounds and potential property damage. She made my battery system sound like a nuclear reactor in someone's basement. When she finished, I stood to present my evidence. Permits, inspections, professional certifications, everything that proved my system was not only legal but professionally installed. Karen listened with a patient smile. When I finished, she shook her head sadly. David, I appreciate your diligence, but permits do not address our community standards. This is not about what the city allows. This is about what is right for Willowbrook Estates. The other board members nodded along. Nobody questioned her logic. Nobody asked to see my documentation. The system must be removed within 30 days, Karen announced. Final decision. I left that meeting knowing that I was in serious trouble. This was not about safety or community standards. This was about something else entirely. Something personal. The harassment started the next morning. I woke up to find Karen standing in my front yard with a camera, photographing my house from every angle. When she saw me watching from the window, she waved cheerfully and continued taking pictures. By noon, the first citation arrived. Mailbox 3 inches too far from the curb. Violation notice. The next day brought another citation. Garden hose visible from the street. Violation notice. Day 3, garbage cans not stored properly. Violation notice. Karen was hunting me with the dedication of a serial killer. Every morning, she would appear somewhere on my street, always with her camera, always with her measuring tape, always with that cold smile. The certified letters started arriving daily. Legal letterhead, formal language, escalating threats. Remove the battery system or face fines of $500 per day. Remove the battery system or face legal action. Remove the battery system or face forced compliance. I hired a lawyer, a good one, someone who specialized in HOA disputes. This is harassment, he told me after reviewing the stack of letters. But proving it will be difficult. She is following the letter of the law, even if she is abusing the spirit of it. What are my options? Fight it in court, file counter-suits, hope for a reasonable judge. How long will that take? Years, maybe decades, and it will cost you everything you have. I was trapped. Karen knew it. The system was designed to crush people like me, people who could not afford to fight back. That was when Karen made her next move. She began recruiting other residents to spy on me. I would see neighbors walking past my house at odd hours, taking pictures with their phones. People who had been friendly before suddenly avoided eye contact. Mrs. Henderson stopped bringing me soup. The mailman started asking weird questions about my work schedule. Even the grocery store cashier mentioned that someone had been asking about my shopping habits. Karen was building a network of informants, people who probably did not even realize they were being used. My work started suffering. I spent more time dealing with HOA nonsense than completing client projects. Conference calls were interrupted by Karen knocking on my door with new violation notices. I missed deadlines because I was in meetings with lawyers. 3 months into the harassment campaign, Karen played her masterstroke. She called an emergency community meeting. The topic was neighborhood safety concerns. The community center was packed wall to wall. People I had never seen before filled every seat. Karen took the podium like a seasoned politician. Her voice carried perfectly through the room as she began to speak. We are here tonight because one of our residents has installed dangerous equipment that threatens our entire community. She was talking about my battery system again, but this time her story had evolved. I have received multiple reports of electromagnetic interference affecting medical devices, pacemakers, insulin pumps, equipment that keeps our most vulnerable residents alive. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted about protecting the elderly. Another voice demanded immediate action. I stood up, my face burning with anger. That is completely false. My system produces no electromagnetic interference whatsoever. Karen smiled that cold smile. David, I understand you believe that, but we have documented evidence of interference patterns consistent with high-powered electrical systems. She had no evidence. She was lying to a room full of people who trusted her, but it did not matter. The crowd had already made up their minds. We need to act before someone gets hurt, Karen continued. Before a child is injured, before an elderly resident suffers because their medical equipment fails. The petition started circulating before I could respond. Signatures collected with frightening efficiency. Remove the dangerous equipment. Protect our community. Stand up to the selfish resident who puts his convenience above everyone else's safety. 57 signatures in 20 minutes. My neighbors, people I had waved to for months, people I had helped with their groceries and their broken computers. All of them signing a petition to destroy my property based on lies. I left that meeting in a daze. Karen had weaponized the entire community against me. She had turned my neighbors into an angry mob with carefully crafted lies and manufactured fear. But the worst was yet to come. 2 weeks later, I returned from a business trip to find disaster waiting in my garage. The battery system was destroyed, cables cut, circuit boards smashed, $15,000 in equipment reduced to scrap metal and plastic. I stood in the wreckage, my hands shaking with rage. This was no random vandalism. This was professional sabotage. Someone had known exactly which components to target for maximum damage. Someone had known exactly how to make it look like an electrical malfunction. I called the police, filed a report, gave them every detail I could remember. The responding officer was polite but clearly uninterested. Probably just kids, he said, writing half-hearted notes on his pad. Insurance should cover it. But I knew better. This was not kids. This was Karen Mitchell. and she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The insurance adjuster arrived 3 days later, a thin man in his 60s who had seen every type of property damage imaginable. He spent 2 hours examining the wreckage, taking photographs, and asking detailed questions. "This is unusual," he said, crouching beside the destroyed battery rack. "Most electrical failures leave scorch marks, fire damage. This looks more like deliberate destruction." "That is what I thought too. Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt you financially?" I thought about Corinne Mitchell and her campaign of harassment, but I had no proof, no witnesses, no evidence beyond my own suspicions. "I have had some disputes with the HOA president," I said carefully, "but nothing that would lead to this." The adjuster nodded and made notes. "We will investigate thoroughly, but I have to warn you, deliberate destruction cases are very difficult to prove." After he left, I sat in my garage staring at the ruins of my life's work. $15,000 in equipment, months of engineering time, years of professional reputation, all destroyed by someone who was supposed to be protecting the community. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to catch Corinne Mitchell. The security camera installation took me 3 days. Professional-grade equipment hidden throughout my property, cameras in trees, motion sensors in bushes, audio recording devices disguised as decorative fixtures. I turned my home into a fortress of surveillance, every angle covered, every approach monitored, every sound recorded. But I did not stop there. I began researching Corinne Mitchell with the same methodical precision I used to design power systems. Public records, property transactions, business licenses, social media profiles, court documents. What I found made my blood run cold. Corinne had been doing this for years, the same pattern repeated over and over. New homeowner moves in. Minor HOA dispute escalates. Harassment campaign begins. Homeowner eventually sells and moves away. In the past 5 years, 7 families had left Willowbrook Estates under mysterious circumstances. All of them had been involved in disputes with Corinne. All of them had sold their homes at significant losses. The pattern was clear once I knew what to look for. I dug deeper into Corinne's financial records. Her husband owned a construction company that specialized in home modifications and repairs. The same company that had been awarded multiple contracts for HOA compliance projects over the past few years. Corinne was not just a power-hungry HOA president. She was running a protection racket. Harass homeowners until they pay for unnecessary modifications or sell their homes at losses. The mail theft discovery came by accident. I had been tracking an important contract that should have arrived 3 days earlier. When I called the client to confirm the delivery address, they told me the contract had been sent certified mail. The tracking number showed it had been delivered to my address, but I had never received it. I checked with the Postal Service. According to their records, the letter had been signed for by someone named K. Mitchell at my address. Corinne had been intercepting my mail. I set up a test. I had a friend send me a certified letter containing a dummy contract. I watched from my window as the mail carrier approached my house. Instead of knocking on my door, he walked 2 streets over to Corinne's house. She signed for my mail with a smile. That was when I realized the full scope of her operation. Corinne had cultivated relationships with postal workers, utility employees, and local government officials. She had built a network of people who would help her destroy anyone who threatened her authority. I was not just fighting one woman. I was fighting an entire system of corruption. But Karen had made one critical mistake. She had chosen to target someone who understood systems better than she did. I activated the professional monitoring equipment I had installed throughout the neighborhood. The same technology I designed for utility companies, now focused on a single target. Karen Mitchell had no idea that I was tracking every electronic device in her house, every phone call, every internet search, every financial transaction. She thought she was hunting me, but the truth was much more dangerous. I was hunting her. The evidence started accumulating faster than I had expected. Karen's confidence had made her careless, and my security system captured everything. The first breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening. My cameras recorded Karen and two men I did not recognize climbing over my back fence at 11:30 p.m. They wore dark clothing and carried what looked like surveying equipment. I watched from my bedroom window as they spent 20 minutes measuring distances and taking photographs. Karen pointed at my garage while one of the men made notes on a clipboard. They were planning something. The audio recording from that night was even more damning. "The electrical panel is on the north wall." Karen's voice came through clearly on my hidden microphones. "If we make it look like an overload, insurance will cover the damage." "What about the owner?" asked one of the men. "He will be out of town next week. Business trip to Seattle. His calendar is posted on his company website." They were planning to burn down my garage, make it look like an electrical fire caused by my backup system, destroy the evidence of their previous sabotage while creating a new insurance claim. I had it all on video, clear faces, clear voices, clear criminal intent. But I needed more. The mail theft evidence was easier to gather once I knew what to look for. I installed a hidden camera focused on my mailbox and began tracking every piece of mail that should have been delivered. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen intercepted 4 letters, business contracts, insurance correspondence, legal documents. She signed for everything with practiced efficiency. The federal mail theft charges alone would send her to prison for years. But the financial records were the real smoking gun. I had hired a forensic accountant to examine Karen's husband's construction company. What we found was a sophisticated fraud scheme that had been running for years. The pattern was always the same. Karen would identify a homeowner with valuable property. She would manufacture HOA violations to create compliance issues. Then her husband's company would bid on the necessary corrections at inflated prices. If homeowners refused to pay, the harassment would escalate until they sold their homes at significant losses. Karen's network of real estate contacts would then purchase the properties below market value, make minimal improvements, and resell them for massive profits. In 5 years, they had stolen over $2 million from homeowners in Willowbrook Estates. The recorded threats came during what Karen thought was a private confrontation. I had been checking my mail when she approached from behind. She thought no one was watching. She thought my recording equipment was destroyed with the battery system. She was wrong. "You think you are smart, Don, not you?" Karen's voice was cold with rage. "You think you can fight me and win?" I turned to face her, keeping my expression neutral. "I just want to live in peace, Karen." "Peace?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You gave up your right to peace when you decided to challenge me. This is my neighborhood. These are my rules. The law says otherwise. The law, her eyes flashed with contempt. I am the law here. I decide who stays and who goes. I decide who prospers and who suffers. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You have no idea what I am capable of. Ask the Hendersons. Ask the Johnsons. Ask the Martinez family. Oh, wait, you cannot. They are all gone. What did you do to them? Karen smiled that cold smile. The same thing I am going to do to you. I am going to destroy your life piece by piece until you beg me to let you leave. She turned to walk away, then paused. And if you ever try to record me or gather evidence against me, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your very short life. The threat was clear. The criminal intent was obvious, and I had every word on digital recording. But the most damaging evidence came from the other victims. I had reached out to the families who had left Willowbrook Estates under mysterious circumstances. Most were reluctant to talk at first. Karen had traumatized them badly, but when they learned that someone was finally fighting back, they began to open up. The Hendersons had been forced to sell their home after Karen manufactured a dispute about their rose garden. The harassment had escalated to the point where their elderly mother had suffered a heart attack from the stress. The Johnsons had lost their dream home because Karen claimed their children were too noisy. She had filed false complaints with Child Protective Services and the police until they were forced to move. The Martinez family had been targeted because they spoke Spanish at home. Karen had claimed they were operating an illegal business and had their immigration status investigated repeatedly. Each family had evidence: photographs, letters, email records, witness statements. Karen had been systematically destroying lives for years, and I had the documentation to prove it. By the end of the month, I had assembled a comprehensive case file that would make any prosecutor salivate. Mail theft, trespassing, vandalism, harassment, fraud, extortion, conspiracy, civil rights violations. Karen Mitchell had violated so many laws that I lost count. But the best evidence was still coming. My neighborhood monitoring system had been recording everything for weeks. Every phone call Karen made, every email she sent, every financial transaction she completed. I had complete documentation of her entire criminal operation. Karen thought she had destroyed me when she sabotaged my battery system, but she had actually given me the motivation to destroy her completely. The confrontation was coming, and I was ready. The emergency HOA meeting was called for a Friday evening in March. Karen's announcement was dramatic and urgent. Critical safety issues requiring immediate community action. I knew this was her final play. She was going to try to have me expelled from the community permanently. The community center was packed beyond capacity. People stood along the walls and crowded in the doorways. Karen had clearly been working overtime to generate attendance. She took the podium wearing a navy blue suit that made her look like a prosecutor. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Her expression was grim and determined. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight because one of our residents has created a dangerous situation that threatens our entire community. She clicked a remote control, and a PowerPoint presentation appeared on the screen behind her. The first slide showed a photograph of my destroyed battery system. 3 months ago, this illegal electrical installation caused a catastrophic failure that could have killed someone. The homeowner refused to take responsibility. He refused to make the necessary safety modifications. And now, he has escalated his dangerous behavior. The next slide showed photographs of my security cameras. Somehow, Karen had identified and photographed every hidden camera on my property. He has been conducting illegal surveillance of your families, recording your children, monitoring your private activities, violating your basic rights to privacy and safety. The crowd murmured angrily. I could see neighbors who had been friendly before now glaring at me with suspicion and hostility. Karen continued her presentation with the skill of a professional manipulator. She had fabricated evidence. She had coached witnesses. She had created a compelling narrative that painted me as a dangerous criminal who threatened the community. The board has voted unanimously to revoke his homeowner privileges and initiate immediate expulsion proceedings, she announced. All in favor. Hands shot up throughout the room. 50, 60, 75. The majority of the community was voting to destroy my life based on lies. That was when I stood up. I would like to address the community before you vote. Karen's confident expression flickered for just a moment. The discussion period is closed. We are proceeding to the vote. Actually, according to your own HOA handbook, any homeowner has the right to present evidence before disciplinary action is taken. I had memorized the rules better than Karen had. She knew she could not refuse without looking like a tyrant. Very well, 5 minutes. I walked to the front of the room and connected my laptop to the projection system. The crowd watched with hostile curiosity as I began my presentation. 3 months ago, someone destroyed $15,000 worth of my personal property. Tonight, I am going to show you who. The first video began playing. Crystal clear footage of Karen and her 2 accomplices climbing over my fence, measuring distances and planning their attack. The crowd fell silent. Karen's face went pale. "This is fake," she said quickly. "Digital manipulation, computer-generated imagery." I ignored her and played the audio recording of their conversation. Karen's voice filled the room, clearly discussing plans to burn down my garage. "Still fake?" I asked. The next video showed Karen intercepting my mail, signing for packages that belonged to me, walking away with letters that were addressed to my house. "Mail theft is a federal crime," I said calmly, "punishable by up to 5 years in prison." Karen was standing now, her face flushed with rage. "This is harassment. This is stalking. This man is a criminal." "You are right about one thing," I said, advancing to the next slide. "Someone here is a criminal." The financial records appeared on the screen. Bank statements, construction contracts, property transactions, a detailed analysis of Karen's fraud scheme. Over the past 5 years, Karen Mitchell has stolen over $2 million from homeowners in this community. She manufactures HOA violations, then forces you to pay her husband's construction company to fix problems that do not exist. The crowd was staring at the screen in shock. The numbers were undeniable. If you refuse to pay, she escalates the harassment until you sell your home at a loss. Then her network of real estate contacts purchases the property below market value and resells it for massive profits. I clicked to the next slide, which showed photographs of Karen's victims. The Henderson family, the Johnson family, the Martinez family, 7 families driven from their homes by systematic harassment and fraud. Karen was backing toward the door, her confident demeanor completely shattered. "You have no right to present this information," she said, her voice cracking. "This is a private meeting." Actually, this is a public meeting of a homeowners association, and I am presenting evidence of criminal activity that affects every person in this room. The final slide appeared on the screen, a summary of Karen's crimes with corresponding prison sentences. Mail theft, fraud, extortion, conspiracy, civil rights violations. Karen Mitchell is facing a minimum of 20 years in federal prison. The room erupted in chaos. Neighbors shouted questions. Board members demanded explanations. Karen Mitchell fled through the back door like the coward she had always been. But I was not finished yet. "There is one more thing you need to know," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. My backup battery system included professional-grade monitoring equipment, the same technology I designed for utility companies. The crowd fell silent again. I have recordings of every electronic device in this neighborhood for the past 6 months. Every phone call, every email, every financial transaction, everyone who helped Karen Mitchell commit these crimes. I looked directly at the postal worker who had been intercepting my mail, at the code enforcement officer who had filed false reports, at the real estate agent who had been purchasing properties below market value. The FBI will be very interested in this evidence. Karen Mitchell's reign of terror was over, and justice was finally coming to Willowbrook Estates. The federal agents arrived at Karen's house on a Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. I watched from my bedroom window as they knocked on her door with professional courtesy and legal authority. Karen answered in her bathrobe, her perfectly styled hair disheveled for the first time since I had known her. The lead agent showed his badge and began reading from a warrant. "Karen Mitchell, you are under arrest for mail theft, fraud, extortion, and conspiracy to commit federal crimes." Her husband was arrested 20 minutes later at his construction company office. Federal agents seized his computers, his financial records, and his client files. The local news crews were already on scene. By noon, the story was spreading across social media. HOA president arrested in $1 million fraud scheme. The details were too incredible to believe, but the evidence was overwhelming. The entire HOA board resigned within 48 hours. 3 of them were facing criminal charges for their roles in Karen's operation. The remaining members simply wanted to distance themselves from the scandal. My insurance company moved quickly to recover damages. They filed civil lawsuits against Karen, her husband, and everyone involved in the conspiracy. The damages included not just my destroyed equipment, but punitive damages for the extended harassment campaign. The settlement was more money than I had ever seen in my life. But the best part was watching Karen's network of corruption collapse. The postal worker who had been intercepting my mail was fired and faced federal charges. The code enforcement officer who had filed false reports was suspended pending investigation. The real estate agents who had been purchasing properties below market value were stripped of their licenses. Karen had built her empire on fear and intimidation. But when people realized she had no real power, the whole system crumbled overnight. The other victims began coming forward with their own evidence. The Henderson family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, claiming Karen's harassment had caused their mother's heart attack. The Johnson family sued for damages to their children's emotional well-being. The Martinez family filed civil rights violations for the immigration harassment. Karen Mitchell faced lawsuits totaling over $10 million. But the criminal charges were what really mattered. Federal mail theft, state charges for vandalism and trespassing, civil rights violations for targeting families based on race and national origin. The federal prosecutor told me Karen was facing a minimum of 15 years in prison. Her husband would serve at least 10 years. Their entire criminal enterprise would be dismantled. The neighborhood transformation was remarkable. Without Karen's toxic influence, Willowbrook Estates became the community it was always supposed to be. Neighbors helped each other. Children played safely in the streets. People actually enjoyed the HOA meetings. I upgraded my power monitoring system and offered it as a community resource. Now, instead of targeting criminals, it helps optimize energy usage and prevents power outages. The same technology that brought down Karen Mitchell now protects the community. My home office is back to normal. 3 monitors display real-time data from client power grids. Servers hum quietly in custom-built racks. Every wire is perfectly organized. But now I have something more valuable than reliable power. I have a community that stands together against bullies and criminals. Karen Mitchell thought she could destroy me. Instead, she handed me the tools to destroy her completely. Justice has been served, and Willowbrook Estates is finally at peace.